Hi, Professor Ward. I'm going to go ahead and get started with our reference project. So right now I have them all divided by each reference project that we did 1 through 5, just for the purposes of this presentation. Once this is over, I'll be sure to put this in a clip or a ring just to keep them all together. But I will go ahead and get started. So for reference project number 1, we were asked to do the vowel quadrilateral. So here I drew the vowel quadrilateral on the front with some notes on the back. So all of the vowels in English are plotted on this two-dimensional figure to represent tongue advancement and height. So tongue advancement is divided into 3 dimensions. That is high, mid, and low. Tongue advancement is also divided into 3 dimensions, and that is front, central, and back. Another characteristic of vowels involves lip rounding, whether they are rounded or rounded. Most vowels that are produced in the back are rounded, whereas the front vowels are all unrounded. So the front vowels I wrote each front vowel down in the IPA letter, and then also put in a word with that example in there. So for example, the lowercase I, the description, the height is high, the advancement is front, the lips are unrounded, and it is tense. Same with the back vowels. I listed each one listed in our book. And then on the back, I have each one. For example, the lowercase u, the height is high, the advancement is in the back, the lips are rounded, and it is tense as well. Next, I have all 5 of the English diphthongs. I wrote each one down, listed in our textbook, as well as a word for example and to reference. Next, I have each of the central vowels. I wrote a card for each vowel. So the first one would be the schwa, as in alone, and I wrote that it is unstressed. I put the description on the bottom. So the height is mid, the advancement is central, the lips are unrounded, and it is lax. And then I wrote on the back some sample words. So astound, roasted, mountain. The next one I have is the turned V wedge. Same thing, I wrote the description on the bottom. The height is low, mid, the advancement is back, central, the lips are unrounded, and it is lax. And then same as the last, I wrote sample words on the back. So rub, undone, luckily, public. Next one I wrote was the right hook schwa, the schwar, and then I made sure to write it to the side. And the description of that one is the height is mid, the advancement is central, the lips are rounded, and it is lax. Then some sample words in the back, pertain, luxury, Saturday. And then the last one that I did was the right hooked epsilon, reversed epsilon. The description of this one, the height is mid, the advancement is central, the lips are rounded, and it is tense. And then some examples of that one would be rehearse, purple, thirsty, and reverse. Next were the R-colored vowels. So again, I did a card for each R-colored vowel, as well as the description. So first one being the small capital L. So the description of that one, the height is high, the advancement is the front, the lips are unrounded, and it is laxed. Some sample words include really, sister, and prince. So the small capital L with the consonant of the turned R, as in here, is an example of when it becomes an R-colored vowel. So I just made sure to make note of that. Next is the epsilon. The height, it is low, mid. The advancement is front, the lips are unrounded, and it is lax. And then I wrote some sample words on the back, pretend, repent, and marry. Next is the upsilon. The description is high, the height is high, the advancement is back, the lips are rounded, and it is lax. Some sample words include sugar, lure, and unsure. The next R-colored vowel is the open O. The description, height is low, mid, advancement is back, the lips are rounded, and it is tense. Some sample words include cord, frog, horde, and wrong. And then the last R-colored vowel listed in our textbook is the script A. The height is low, the advancement is back, the lips are unrounded, and it is tense. So some examples include rotten, father, and car. Okay. So this next one, this is table 5.3 in our textbook, which are the most common places of articulation. So with this one, I just copied down the chart verbatim, put the places of articulation, and then I put the articulators involved. So try and get both. So the first one being bilabial, which are the lips upper and lower. Labiodental, which is the lower lip, and then the upper central incisors, scissors. Next one being dental, so that's the tongue apex and the teeth. Alveolar, which is the tongue apex and the alveolar ridge. Next one is the palatal, which is the blade of the tongue and the hard palate. The velar is the back of the tongue and the velum. Next one is the glottal, which are the vocal folds, and lingual is the tongue. So next one is are the stop consonants. So the first one being, I listed them. I did a card for each one of them. So the first one being the lowercase k and then the lowercase g. So the lowercase k is voiceless, and that's a velar stop, and then the lowercase g is voiced, and that's a velar stop. So I wrote some minimal pairs just to kind of decipher the difference. So I have crow and grow, and then cut and gut. And then the other stop consonants are the lowercase p and the lowercase b, lowercase p being voiceless and a bilabial stop, and then the lowercase b being voiced and the bilabial stop. So, and again, I wrote some minimal pairs, which for this one would be pet and bet, and I've also got rip and rib. And then the next stop consonants are the lowercase t and the lowercase d. So same thing here. Got voiceless alveolar stop and voiced alveolar stop. So same thing with the minimal pairs, to and do, and then taffy and daffy. The next ones I have are the nasal consonants. So this first one being the ing, and then I wrote the IPA letter next to it. And this one is voiced, and it's a velar nasal. And then I wrote some sample words, which ring, finger, and wrinkle. Next one being the lowercase n, and then I wrote the letter next to it. This one is a voiced alveolar nasal. Some sample words, note, tunes, and nervous. Okay, next one is the lowercase m. This one is a voiced bilabial nasal. Some sample words, mark, slam, and maybe. So for each one, I made sure I wrote if it was voiced, voiceless, what kind of nasal consonant, and then some sample words just to differentiate them. And I did the same thing with the next ones, which are the fricative consonants. So the first one being the lowercase h, and that one is voiceless, and that's a glottal fricative. And I wrote some sample words, hook, helium, ahead. Next one I wrote these two. This was the lowercase s and the lowercase z. So some minimal pairs, lacy, lazy, sue, and zoo. I did the same thing for the bottom one, that is the ish, and then I made sure to write the IPA letter next to it. And then some examples for that, which that one is voiceless and it's a palatal fricative. So that would be shook and sure. So it gives it the sh sound. And then the next one was the yog, and then I made sure to write the IPA letter next to it. That has a voiced palatal fricative, so casual erosion, so that's got the zh sound. Next one is the lowercase t and the lowercase v. So fail, veil, fan, and van are some minimal pairs. And the lowercase f, I think I said T, F, is voiceless, and that's a labiodental fricative, and the lowercase v is a voiced labiodental fricative. Next, I have the theta, as well as its IPA letter and the F in the IPA letter. So I've got thermal and thought to represent theta, and I've got bathe and feather to represent the F. And then last on that one is the affricate consonants. So I've got the lowercase. So what I did here is I wrote the IPA letters, and then just to remember like which individual one I wrote, the lowercase t paired with ish, as in chair. And then down here I did the same thing. So a lowercase d with yolk as in jar. And then I wrote some minimal pairs. So batch, badge, and then I have cheap and jeep to represent both sounds. So next I am going to do glides. So I have the lowercase j here, and that's a voiced palatal glide. And then I've got, and that makes the y sound as in your, yellow, and yes. And then I've got the lowercase w, which is a voiced labiovelar glide, as in win, as in quick, and as in away. And then next there are the liquids. So I have this one written down. I have got the turned R with the IPA letter, and that one is a voiced palatal liquid, as in red, brown, and carrot. So it's got the sound. And then I've got the lowercase L, that is voiced, and it's an alveolar liquid, as in lawn, jello, and bottle. So the last one were the processes. So the first one being the syllable structure processes. So what I did is I did a card for each one, instead of doing individual cards for each one of these, just to keep them all together and organized. So I've got the weak syllable deletion. That is a phonological process that involves the omission of an unstressed or a weak syllable, either preceding or following a stressed syllable. And then another one is the final consonant deletion. So that effectively reduces a syllable to a CV pattern, that is to an open syllable. Next, reduplication. So that involves the repetition of a syllable of a word. And then lastly, for syllable structure, is the cluster reduction. And that results in the deletion of a consonant cluster. So next would be the substitution processes. So the first one being stopping, and that involves the substitution of a stop for a fricative or an affricate. Fronting, which involves the substitution of an alveolar phoneme for a velar or palatal articulation. Then next I have deaffrication, which occurs when a child substitutes a fricative for an affricate. And then I have gliding, which is a substitution process that involves the substitution of the glides, lowercase w or lowercase j, for the liquids of lowercase l and turned r. And then last I have the assimilatory processes. So the first one being the labial assimilation. That occurs when a non-labial phoneme is produced with a labial place of articulation. Next is the alveolar assimilation, and that occurs when a non-alveolar phoneme is produced with an alveolar place of articulation due to the presence of an alveolar phoneme elsewhere in the word. As opposed to velar assimilation, that occurs when a non-velar phoneme is produced with a velar place of articulation due to the presence of a velar phoneme elsewhere in the word. And then I've got the voicing assimilation. There are two types. The first one being the pre-vocalic voicing, and that involves voicing of a normally unvoiced consonant. So pig would be big, and that is regressive. And then the second type being devoicing, and that involves the replacement of a voiceless phoneme for a normally voiced syllable final consonant preceding a pause or a silence.